Oh my gosh. Wow. First episode. Thanks for tuning in / listening. Am I showing? Is my age showing? Asking for me. Is it October 16th already? My gosh. Just what? Time is flying. Does anybody else feel like time is flying? You know what? Let me introduce myself. Welcome to the F My Life, I'm a Lawyer podcast, where we discuss the shit they told you, the shit they should have told you, and the shit you know now. The idea of the F My Life, I'm a Lawyer podcast comes from the actual realization like, fuck my life. I'm a lawyer. Now what? But also the sentiment of, fuck my life. I'm a lawyer. With esteem and absolute excitement. Oh, and disclaimer, because would this even be a legal podcast if there wasn't one? This podcast is here to serve as a reminder of just how much we went through, those experiences it took to get here, and why it is we do what we do now. I'm here to be real, raw, and really honest about everything. And so are my guests. Everything like what? You ask? Well, everything. Like the entire journey. From LSAT to getting sworn in. Similarly, I'm here to talk about not every law school journey being fulfilled. Whether it be getting into law school to fail out of law school or just getting into law school to realize this shit is not for me. To me, being a lawyer is not just about pretty pencil skirts and tailored shirts. Although it could be. And yes, of course, it's about being a zealous advocate for our client. But part of our actual professional makeup is about the struggle it took the majority of us to get here. From mustering the courage to apply to law school, getting into law school, going through law school, and subsequently becoming an attorney, all not an easy feat. There will certainly be commiserating, maybe a few calls about the system, the process, how one's cultural background plays into the legal community. And of course, we'll talk about the antiquated bar exam, because why wouldn't we? I do want to be clear that this is not and will never be a bashing about our profession. We all worked incredibly hard to get where we may be. I guess there are some people who might have cheated on an exam or two, but I can't say that. We all worked incredibly hard to be here. While each of us took the trip, none of us share the same journey. One of my goals is to give you a deeper look into the not so easy side, the not so glamorous side, those sleepless nights, at least your first year. An hour spent dedicated to the memos and research and the time you spend on the rule against perpetuities that you'll never get back. The realities you face as an attorney and the lack of understanding you'll likely receive, because if you did not go to law school, you can't get it. You won't get it. Perhaps, if you're listening and know someone who is currently suffering neck deep in curriculum, just recently passed the bar exam, or juggling whether to write their third emergency motion, this may give you some insight on how to better communicate with someone who has. While I can't promise you'll learn a lot of anything, I can promise you a good laugh, more than likely a good cry, a trip down memory lane, if you will, and maybe a sangria recipe. You know, I'm still debating on giving that sangria recipe, but so let's talk about it. Here we go. As always, I make absolutely no promises that this may make you rethink some of your life's choices. So the question is, why did I go to law school? That is a good question I sometimes ask myself, and the question that I will be asking the majority of my guests. So I'll start with culturally speaking. My dad is Greek and my mom is Jamaican. So you can imagine my parents' disappointment when I told them I'm vegan. But nevertheless, my dad came over from Greece in 1983. He always had this crazy work ethic that he instilled in me. And I remember him taking me to work with him. Hopefully nobody's familiar with child labor laws. But I would go to work with him when I was like 4 years old and be like, Daddy, can I stock the sodas? And it's actually a really fond memory that I have with my dad. And I just knew, just literally from the age of 4 up until literally today, my dad is just a very disciplined, hardworking, diligent, honest man. And he definitely instilled this incredible work ethic in me that I carried throughout my education, from Old Westbury School of the Holy Child to Our Lady of Mercy Academy to Syracuse University to Albany Law to Toro Law, subsequently to finish my JD. So I would have to say that I remember him asking me when I might have been like 4 or 5 or something. And he was like, oh, Katerina, what do you want to do when you grow up? Or, what do you want to be? And I was like, oh, Daddy, I want to be a ballerina, or I want to be a dancer, or, do something in the music industry, or so. I was some sort of conversation where along the lines of dance, music, playing an instrument. And he was like, Katerina, okay, I did not come from Greece for you to do the dance. You are either a doctor or a lawyer. I said, yeah. Oh my God, shattered dreams I remember as a tot. And I said, you know what? So I realized I could combine, of course, later on in life, I realized I could combine exactly what I always had a passion for, which not only turned out to be the law and music, but also intellectual property. And I decided to pursue that when I went to Syracuse University. Go Orange. I've always been a big proponent of pushing myself to learn more, do more, create more, etc. So when I went to Syracuse University undergrad, my major was in English and textual studies. And I had a minor in music industry and business. And of course that wasn't enough. So I decided to get my master's in intellectual property and technology transfer from Albany Law. And then subsequently went on to earn my JD at Toro Law. So that's the quick and dirty overview, but let's just jump back to Syracuse University for a second. Towards the end of Syracuse University, I started applying to law schools, and I still had that like undergrad mentality where we're just going to throw applications out there and see what the hell sticks, right? Terrible idea. So I think it was like the last day of being able to apply to law schools, or the ones that I was going to apply to. And I remember at that time, my main application, I believe I only applied to 3 law schools, one of them being Syracuse University Law School. And I applied the last day you possibly could apply back in 2007 when I was graduating from Syracuse University. And eventually I got a rejection letter, or was it a rejection? To be entirely honest with you, I don't exactly remember, but I'm fairly certain it was a rejection letter. And them writing in the letter like, unfortunately, so many applicants have applied at this time. And it was something along the lines of, you should have applied earlier. What are you doing? What were you doing this entire time? Of course we want to take our own. I said, wow, I really cut myself short by not applying to a multitude of law schools and giving myself a limited amount of time, which was very hard to admit to myself, given the fact that I thought I was so intelligent. And having to then go back to my family and be like, I didn't get into law school. But I did end up getting a job, because during my time, jumping around a little bit, and you'll come to find out that I do go off on random tangents in a lot of these episodes, but I'm sorry, it's part of my personality. So in 2006, while I was working on my minor in music industry and business, I was at Syracuse University's music school doing my minor, and I had the sweetest professor. He was just, gosh, I wish I remember his name, but he was just so darling. And during that class, one of his old students, or students that know a student, walked in and was like, oh my gosh, do you know, so-and-so? He's back from interning at this big record label and all this other stuff. So later on after the class, my professor approached me and he was like, so-and-so is looking for an intern for the record label that he is now at after he had successfully accomplished interning at that record label. And I was like, oh my gosh, intern at a record label. This could be everything I've ever imagined and ever wanted. And my professor was like, I think you will be a great fit. And of course, I was just, oh wow, I am thrilled that you even considered me. What kind of music is this? And my professor looked at me like, what? This is the music industry. It doesn't matter what kind of music. But I was like, no. What label? What is it? And my professor said to me, well, he worked for the country music section. I said, country music, like, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely, at 39 years of age, I thoroughly enjoy myself some country music now. And I know at some point in my life, specifically back in 2006, I don't think I was as open as I am to other music. And so that was my initial reaction. Country music? Like, I don't want to work in country music. But my professor gave me that look. What's wrong with you? This is an incredible opportunity that you need to take hold of and go in there and show them what you're capable of. So I said, sign me up. So around 2 weeks later, I did get the confirmation that I would be interning under this individual for this record label. And I was so excited. Like, so excited. So 2006, started interning for this record label. And I remember I started there and my eyes were so wide open, glassy, glistening, just bunny rabbit, big doughy eyes, just very excited to be there and also very overwhelmed. But it was so fast paced. And the person who I met with at the time, who ended up being like my main manager, who then of course ended up recommending me to actually be able to work there when I graduated from Syracuse University, he sat me down in his office and he said to me, again, remember this is 2006. So he sat me down in his office and I remember this conversation was like it was yesterday. And he said, I do want to let you know that if you have any questions, you can come in here and you can ask me anything you want. But I also want to let you know that you are a female in a very male-dominated industry. And at times, you may feel very uncomfortable. But your ability to handle your uncomfortability will determine essentially how far I continue to get within the industry. Wow, that was, looking back on it today, especially with the temperature, I should say, is not altogether surprising, but it definitely stuck with me. And I remember being like, wow, I gotta be a tough bitch. I gotta really be able to take care of myself in a way that probably not many people can. So I took that to heart. I had that idea in the back of my head for clearly right up until today's date. But I carried with me those words as an intern, as an employee, and obviously to date. So one of the things that my internship did show me is that you will do a lot of dumb shit for either recognition or demonstration that you are capable, ready, willing, and able of being this incredible employee or future employee. And I remember not the guy that I interned for, but the boss of the guy that I interned for being like, okay, so I remember it was like the World Cup. It was Italy versus, I don't remember who it was, doesn't matter. But that boss was like, I need you to go out in the city and find us some flags for all the individuals in the boardroom. I'm like, dude, that is like, I gotta find like 15 flags during the height of the World Cup specifically for Italy. And everybody loves everybody loves the Italians, right? So I was like, I don't know if this is going to happen, but yeah, sure, absolutely. Whatever you want, boss. So I go out there and I'm looking, when I worked in the industry, I was trying to look cute, right? I had my heels on, my jeans, I'm running. I had to run because he gave me a deadline It's like 40 minutes. I'm like, dude, I got to leave here, go trace around the city. I have to find 15 Italy flags. What? Is that even going to be possible? But I tried my best. I ran up and down the streets like 51st and Lex, 8th and 48th, 9th, and I was on multiple avenues and multiple streets within minutes of each other. I came back sweaty as all hell, but I did find 3 little flags, and of course it wasn't good enough. Why would it be, right? But I guess it showed in his head, later on, come to find out, tenacity, dedication, persistence. And at the end of that internship, he ended up offering me a job. So when I graduated Syracuse University, though I didn't get into my law school of choice, though I didn't get into law school period at that moment in time, I ended up having a job. And trust me, it wasn't just because I ran up and down the streets of New York City looking for these flags to represent Italy. It was also because I worked really hard during my internship. I put in hours that were just absolutely obscene during my internship. I cleaned during my internship. I sat in on meetings and for hours during my internship. I wasn't getting paid. And at that time, it wasn't even for credit. It was, I believe I received a stipend for travel, but what was it, like $2.50 on the sub? You know what I'm saying? Like, prices were different back then. Laws were different back then in terms of interning for credit or externing for credit. So I had to hope that something was going to come out of it. And I lucked out because it did. So in 2007, while I did not go to law school, I did work for a solid year, and it was a really good experience in my eyes. But obviously, working for a group of attorneys and knowing that you're either a paralegal or an attorney, or you're either a paralegal or a lawyer, I knew I wanted more, and I knew eventually I would need to go to law school, because this is something that you need. It doesn't matter who likes you. It doesn't matter about favorites. I mean, eventually, if someone is like, oh, that person's really nice, I think they hold themselves to a certain esteem or standard, and I would like them at my firm, that's different. But you cannot move anywhere in any position without a degree. You have to go to law school. You have to go to law school, get a degree, pass the bar, and find yourself a job. So I said, what the fuck? What am I sitting here for? I need to get out of here, and I need to start reapplying to law school, because the longer it takes me to apply to law school is the longer it'll take for me to become an attorney. So I decided to apply to law school again. And I applied to several law schools this time, and I applied to several law schools prior to the dates, like months in advance, prior to those dates that those applications were due. And lo and behold, Albany Law accepted me. Thanks, Albany Law. And how do I talk about this in a nice way? I went there and met scrap that. I met there and met one person that I love and adore still to this day. She's one of my greatest friends, and she will also be a guest on this podcast. Her name is Naija, and we are still friends. We ended up getting accepted into the same program at Albany Law, which was basically where we achieved our master's in intellectual property and technology transfer. And I'll talk more about the Albany Law experience. I'll talk more about the Albany Law experience when Naisha comes to visit, because I'm not sure I can recount the days there by myself, but it was quite an experience. So after achieving my master's, I went downstate to Toro Law to finish or to start my JD. I can't say enough good things about Toro, located in Suffolk. I guess I am going to give them a shout out. Shout out to Toro Law School in Suffolk County on Long Island. Man, wow. They really took a chance. And I appreciate them for it, because I'm going to be entirely honest with you. I am a terrible test taker, but I am extraordinarily book smart. I cannot take a test for the life of me. I was a straight A student. After I had 2 majors and a minor at Syracuse University, I graduated summa cum laude from Albany Law School. I graduated cum laude from Syracuse University. I have never, like, a C was unheard of. A B was unheard of. So yeah, I was a straight A student, and I just couldn't take a test for the life of me. So I took okay, let's be real. Oh my gosh, carry the one. Might have taken the LSAT like 10 times? No, that's a lie. Anywhere in between 6 and 8 times. And the highest score, I don't remember it, but let's just put it to you. It was average. It was average at best. Toro Law said, you've done a lot of, they didn't say this specifically to me, but based on the fact that I was accepted, I assume that they had conversations in the boardroom that said, this girl is fairly well-rounded. She played a sport. She had the capability of maintaining these grades, all while having 2 majors and a minor. And she worked, and she has this experience, and she has her master's and all this other stuff. So maybe I appeared, and I believe I'm fairly well-rounded. They took me in. Bless their hearts and souls. And I am forever grateful to Toro Law. And quite a few other professors. Again, I'm going to speak about them probably throughout these episodes here, but 2 professors specifically. And if you guys know them, if anybody knows them, please let them know I'm still talking about them. And I might just even send this to Toro Law. But Professor Rena Seplowitz, what a doll. She was my mentor. And I'll talk more about this again at a later date, but she was my property teacher. She was also my intellectual property cheerleader. She allowed me to write several papers for her class on copyright and patents and trademark. I just love her. And she kept me sane throughout my journey. She was a cheerleader for me left and right. She could tell there was something in me that would never give up. And she took me under her beautiful wing of hers and just really helped me succeed, I believe. And it was so nice to have a professor like that in my corner, which again, like I said, I'll talk about more at a later date. And the other professor there was Professor Questel. And for those of us who are listening, who went to Toro Law and who had Professor Questel, you're probably like, what? What? Because he would always say what, for starters. And we would also say what because, like, Professor Questel, like, when we first started law school, I remember we were all like, this is a bit unorthodox. Like, this is just, he doesn't teach like a regular professor. He was like philosophical in his approach as a professor. It was not, here's an outline, we're going to go through this outline, study this outline, take a test. It was, did you read the chapter? Talk to me about it. What do you have any questions? And we're all like, what? Like, what do you mean? Help us, professor. Show us the way. And I think because he didn't show us the way right away, that's what made him an incredible professor. Sounds weird, I know, but it was just him making us think. And many years later, I realized he was probably one of the greatest professors I've ever had. So shout out to Professor Questel. Oh, and Professor Zablotsky, where are you? My dude, he was great too. Okay, that's enough. But definitely my 2 to 3 favorite professors, Rena Seplowitz, love you to death. I can go on for hours about them. So I was so
so excited to start law school and like officially start law school. And I was already thinking about jobs and what firm am I going to be at? Where am I going to be that's going to get me a foot in the door? And where am I going to be the top attorney? And the one thing that I do want to say is that yes, you would think, so there were a lot of us, and my class that I started with, there were quite a few people who were competitive for no good reason. But I'm like, guys, what? Why are you so agitated? Like, why are you so combative? It's not that serious. If I could, and that's part of the shit they told you. The shit they told you was, you're going to go to law school. You're going to be with a group of competitive students. You're going to be with people who are going to pretend to be your friends. You're going to need to intern to be the most successful person. Okay, shut up. What? Like, the shit you told me is not true. A majority of it is not true. Okay. It was just not, but there were some gems in there. And I think because we were all told this hypothetical, mythical story, we all went in there with heightened scrutiny, and we were scared, and we were all like at each other's throats for no good reason. That was the one thing. I forgot what professor told me, but it was the one thing that one professor told me. And I remember that they were like, all we have is our reputation. Essentially, they were like, look left, look right. The people you were sitting next to, a lot of them won't be there next year. That was definitely true. So look left, look right. The people that you're sitting next to may or may not be your friends. They may or may not be here next year. The majority of them won't be here next year. So all you have is your good name and your reputation. And because the legal community, despite how vast it is, and despite how there are so many attorneys out there, just in New York State alone, despite there being so many attorneys, we are still such a small community, and everything is word of mouth and reputation, and word travels fast. So remember that when you're treating somebody with or without respect who's sitting next to you. Remember that when you decide to talk behind their back, or remember that when you are having conversations with them or whatever it is that you're doing. Just remember this person will remember you later on. And you don't want for you to come up in conversation with another individual like, oh, hey, remember when we did that? Remember when this person did this? Remember what? And that stuck with me. And to this day, I remember sitting with my former boss, Richard Tannenbaum, also going to be another guest, one of the top attorneys on Long Island who does divorce law. And he was absolutely an incredible boss. And he told me a story about one of his attorney friends. And I'm just like, that guy? Like, really? Like, we work together. And that's the one thing you remember too? I'm like, geez. And small world. That's all I'm going to say. So what a journey that was. What was your journey like? Are you starting to reminisce? There are so many things that I can't wait to talk about, get your perspective on, share what life was like in law school and what life is like as an attorney. School. All right. We made it through. We made it through our first episode. And I can't wait for you to meet my guests, who are absolutely awesome human beings, for starters, but also very incredible attorneys. So don't be shy. Let's talk about it. Check out if I could find this answer, check out the My Life I'm a Lawyer podcast right here, because check out the My Life I'm a Lawyer podcast right here, or anywhere you find podcasts. because what's better than a little midweek fuckery? Remember, more cool, evil, not uptight.